Hello, dear conquistadors, and welcome to the show where I get into a cannon and shoot myself into your heart. But it's really, we're reading Harry Potter every single day. We've been doing so since quarantine. I've not read the books before. Do not ruin anything in the chat or in the spoilers, or I swear I will haunt you. Until my dying breath, I will hunt you down and then haunt you. I will do so. I've got some neck pain again. It's happened again. I was just lying down. That's all I did. Then I got up and was like, oh, I guess I can't move my neck. So it's gotten better. I can do it. I can do it a little bit, but it just out of nowhere happened. But Merry Christmas season, everybody. I hope you're having a good start, a good first Advent. Just so you know, I will be reading today and tomorrow, but I am going to be part of a play. We were going to do a play reading. We were going to perform a play during December. It was planned early in the year before we knew there was going to be a quarantine. And of course that got cancelled. Then we planned to do a live play reading just one evening this Friday. It was already planned. That didn't end up happening either because of quarantine that got extended. So what's going to happen is we're going to be recording the play reading from a Zoom scenario, but still trying to make it as good as we can. So I'll be sharing the link for that at some point, so you can watch a different version of my performances if you want to. Stop hurting your neck, John. It's not good for you. Not the neck pain. Oh, stop hurting. Yeah, thanks everybody. I appreciate that. Thank you. Neck pain is because you're getting old, John. No, it's because I was in a car crash where I got crashed into twice and I got whiplash backwards and to the side. So I've been dealing with that for about 3 years now. It's been really, really fun. Okay, enough of that. We're not here for my pails and ailments. Let's get started on some Harry Potter fun. So the last thing that happened is they are getting ready. They did a lot of preparation and planning to break into the ministry. So this is going to be pretty exciting, I think. It's going to be pretty interesting and exciting. And also, Creature, out of nowhere, bonked Mungus on the head with a huge metal pan. Which is one of my favorite things that happen in this series. A couple of my favorite things. Usually they're all slapsticky. All the slapsticky things are really visceral for me. I really love. Okay, let's get going. Well, we do care about you, so I don't mind how you're doing. Oh, that's very nice, Malchurl. Thank you very much. Okay, let's get started. Oh, that's a weak scar, hey? Oh, well, I'd probably ruin it if I do it again, but here we go. I'm ruining it. Ruining it. Dawn seemed to follow midnight with indecent haste. What a great first sentence. I love that. You look terrible, was Ron's greeting, as he entered the room to wake Harry. Not for long, said Harry, yawning. They found Hermione downstairs in the kitchen. She was being served coffee and hot rolls by Creature, and wearing the slightly manic expression that Harry associated with exam revision. Rubes! No, Rubes, she said under her breath, acknowledging their presence with a nervous nod, and continuing to poke around in her beaded bag. Polyjuice potion? Invisibility cloak, decoy detonators. You should each take a couple just in case. Puking pastilles, nosebleed nougat, extendable ears. She's the real mastermind here. Come on, who are we kidding? It's not Harry. Harry wouldn't have achieved anything if it was for Hermione. Harry could have achieved things if it wasn't for Ron. Ron's helped out, for sure. For sure he's helped out. But he would have been nowhere without Hermione. They gulped down their breakfast, then set off upstairs, Creature bowing them out and promising to have a steak and kidney pie ready for them when they returned. Bless him, said Ron fondly. And when you think I used to fantasize about cutting off his head and sticking it on the wall. What? Ron? You've got some serial killer tendencies there. Oh, boy. Ooh. They made their way onto the front step with immense caution. They could see a couple of puffy-eyed Death Eaters watching the house from across the misty square. Maybe a bit different music for now. It's not quite creepy or anything or sad. Hermione disapparated with Ron first, then came back for Harry. Has anybody ever counted how many times they would have been dead without Hermie? After the usual brief spell of darkness and near suffocation, Harry found himself in the tiny alleyway where the first phase of their plan was scheduled to take place. It was as yet deserted, except for a couple of large bins. The first ministry workers did not usually appear here until at least 8 o'clock. Right then, said Hermione, checking her watch. She ought to be here in about 5 minutes. When I've stunned her... Hermione, we know, said Ron sternly, and I thought we were supposed to open the door before she got here. Hermione squealed. Oh, I nearly forgot! Stand back! She pointed her wand at the padlocked and heavily graffitied door beside them, which burst open with a crash. The dark corridor behind it led, as they knew from their careful scouting trips, into an empty theater. Hermione pulled the door back towards her, to make it look as though it was still closed. And now, she said, turning back to face the other two in the alleyway, we put on the cloak again. And we wait, Ron finished, throwing it over Hermione's head like baize over a budgerigar? Budgerigar? Don't know what that is. And rolling his eyes at Harry. Little more than a minute later, there was a tiny pop, and a little ministry witch with flyaway gray hair apparated feet from them, blinking a little in the sudden brightness. The sun had just come out from behind a cloud. If there's an adjective for her, you can throw it in there, otherwise I'll just make something up. She barely had time to enjoy the unexpected warmth, however, before Hermione's silent stunning spell hit her in the chest. Oh, okay, stunning spell. And she toppled over. Nicely done, Hermione, said Ron, emerging from behind a bin beside the theater door, as Harry took off the invisibility cloak. Together, they carried the little witch into the dark passageway that led backstage. Hermione plucked a few hairs from the witch's head and added them to a flask of muddy polyjuice potion she had taken from the beaded bag. Ron was rummaging through the little witch's handbag. She's Mafilda Hopkirk, he said, reading a small card that identified their victim as an assistant in the improper use of magic office. You'd better take this, Hermione, and here are the tokens. He passed her several small golden coins, the thing that gets him into places now, hey? All embossed with the letters M-O-M, Mom, which she had taken from the witch's purse. It's a budgie. It's a bird cage, a budgie, a bird. Okay, cool. Hello, Nat Sus. Hermione drank the polyjuice potion, which was now a pleasant heliotrope color, and within seconds stood before them, the double of Mafalda Hopkirk. Oh, I think we do need a voice for Mafalda Hopkirk, because if Hermione's going to speak as her, we're going to have her voice. As she removed Mafalda's spectacles and put them on, Harry checked his watch. We're running late. Mr. Magical Maintenance will be here any second. They hurried to close the door on the real Mafalda. Mafalda? Squeaky? She's very official. They hurried to close the door on the real Mafalda. Harry and Ron threw the invisibility cloak over themselves, but Hermione remained in view, waiting. For her time to kill. Seconds later, there was another pop, and a small, ferrety-looking wizard appeared before them. Oh, hello, Mafalda. Quavery. Hello, said Hermione in a quavery voice. How are you today? Not so good, actually, replied the little wizard, who looked thoroughly downcast. As Hermione and the wizard headed for the main room, Harry and Ron crept along behind them. I'm so sorry to hear you're under the weather, said Hermione, talking firmly over the little wizard, as he tried to expound upon his problems. It was essential to stop him reaching the street. Here, have a sweet. Eh? Oh, no thanks. I insist, said Hermione aggressively, shaking the bag of pastilles in her face. In his face. Looking rather alarmed, the little wizard took one. The effect was instantaneous. The moment the pastille touched his tongue, the little wizard started vomiting so hard that he did not even notice as Hermione yanked a handful of hairs from the top of his head. Oh dear, she said, as he splattered the alley with sick...
Perhaps you'd better take the day off.
No.
He choked and retched, trying to continue on his way despite being unable to walk straight.
I must. Today. Must go.
But that's just silly, said Hermione, alarmed. You can't go working in this state. I think you ought to go to St. Mungo's and get them to sort you out.
The wizard had collapsed, heaving on all fours. Oh, poor guy. Still trying to crawl towards the main street.
You simply can't go to work like this,
cried Hermione. At last he seemed to accept the truth of her words. Using a repulsed Hermione to claw his way back into a standing position, he turned on the spot and vanished, leaving nothing behind but the bag Ron had snatched from his hand as he went, and some flying chunks of vomit. I'm looking forward to seeing that scene too. Ugh, said Hermione, holding up the skirts of her robe to avoid the puddles of sick. Ugh. It would have made much less mess to stun him too. Yeah, said Ron, emerging from under the cloak holding the wizard's bag. I still think a whole pile of unconscious bodies would have drawn more attention. Keen on his job, though, isn't he? Chuck us the hair and the potion, then. Within 2 minutes, Ron stood before them, as small and ferrety as the sick wizard, and wearing the navy blue robes that had been folded in his bag. Who's saying this? Oh, that's it. That's Ron. Weird he wasn't wearing them today, wasn't it? Seeing how much he wanted to go. Anyway, I'm Reg Catamol, according to the label on the back. Now wait here, Hermione told Harry, who was still under the invisibility cloak, and we'll be back with some hairs for you. He had to wait 10 minutes, but it seemed much longer to Harry, skulking alone in the six-splattered alleyway beside the door concealing the stunned Mafalda. Finally, Ron and Hermione reappeared. We don't know who he is, Hermione said, passing Harry several curly black hairs, but he's gone home with a dreadful nosebleed. Here, he's pretty tall. He'll need bigger robes. She pulled out a set of the old robes Creature had laundered for them, and Harry retired to take the potion and change. Once the painful transformation was complete, he was more than 6 feet tall, and from what he could tell from his well-muscled arms, powerfully built. How did they take this guy down? He also had a beard. Stowing the invisibility cloak and his glasses inside his new robes, he rejoined the other two. Blimey, that's scary, said Ron, looking up at Harry, who now towered over him. Take one of Mafalda's tokens, Hermione told Harry, and let's go. It's nearly 9. They stepped out of the alleyway together. 50 yards along the crowded pavement, there were spiked black railings flanking 2 flights of steps, one labeled gentlemen, the other ladies. I love when John laughs at things that really aren't written for a man in his 30s. Do you mean the puke? You think puke's only funny to kids? Nuh-uh. Nuh-uh-uh-uh-uh. I think any age can laugh about it. I think it's so dumb when people say, oh, I'm too old for that. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? It doesn't mean anything. See you in a moment then, said Hermione nervously. And she tottered off down the steps to the ladies. Harry and Ron joined the number of oddly dressed men descending into what appeared to be an ordinary underground public toilet.
When you gotta go, it's toilet time.
It's toilet time.
There we go. There we go. Yes. Not what I said, John, but it clearly wasn't written for people in their 30s. It's really a compliment. Thanks, Timon. Thank you. All right, let's keep going. See you in a moment then. Oh, so yeah, right. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Toilet tiled and grimy black and white. Morning, Greg, called another wizard in navy blue robes as he let himself into a cubicle by inserting his golden token into a slot in the door. Bloomin' pain in the bum, this, eh? Forcing us all to go to work this way? Who are they expecting to turn up? Harry Potter? The wizard roared with laughter at his own wit. Ron gave a forced chuckle. Oh, right, who is he? Yeah, I'm trying to... Ron doing that squeaky voice, but Ron. Yeah, he said. Stupid, isn't it? And he and Harry let themselves into adjoining cubicles. To Harry's left and right came the sound of flushing. He crouched down and peered through the gap at the guy next door pooping. He's like, let me just take a look here before make sure this coast is clear. Navneet! Happy birthday, Navneet! You are the best today! It's your birthday, Navneet! Happy birthday to you! I couldn't find an ending to it. My bad, Navneet. I'm so sorry. All right. Where are we? Yeah, he crouched down and peered through the gap at the bottom of the cubicle, just in time to see a pair of booted feet climbing into the toilet next door. He looked left and saw Ron blinking at him. We have to flush ourselves in, he whispered. Looks like it. Ugh, Harry whispered back. His voice came out deep and gravelly. Looks like it. Looks like it. They both stood up, feeling exceptionally foolish. Harry clambered into the toilet. Come on. Oh, man. It's so good. He knew at once that he had done the right thing. I don't know why that's a funny sentence. He clambered into the toilet. I've done the right thing. This was the right choice. Though he appeared to be standing in water, his shoes, feet, and robes remained quite dry. He reached up, pulled the chain, and the next moment had zoomed down a short chute, emerging out of a fireplace into the Ministry of Magic. That's so funny. Imagine you just get into a toilet feet first, you're just standing there. Yep. This was a good choice. Nothing happens. It doesn't lead them anywhere. They're just standing in the toilet. Good choice. Good choice, mate. Yeah, thank you. It's pretty great, huh? Yeah. It's nice and cold around the feet. Oh, man. Okay. It's still so funny. Oh, man, okay. He got up clumsily. There was a lot more of his body than he was accustomed to. The great atrium seemed darker than Harry remembered it. Oh, man. I don't know, it's so funny. Previously, a golden fountain had filled the center of the hall. Casting shimmering spots of light over the polished wooden floor and walls. Now, a gigantic statue of black stone dominated the scene. It was rather frightening. This vast sculpture of a witch and a wizard sitting on ornately carved thrones, looking down at the ministry workers toppling out of fireplaces below them. Engraved in in foot-high letters at the base of the statue were the words, "Magic is might." Harry received a heavy blow in the back of the legs. Another wizard had just flown out of the fireplace behind them. Oh, for a second I thought they were being attacked. Harry received... Okay, Out of the way, can't you? Oh, sorry, Runcorn. Clearly frightened, the balding wizard hurried away. Apparently the man whom Harry was impersonating, Runcorn, was intimidating. Psst, said a voice, and he looked round to see a wispy little witch and the ferrety wizard from magical maintenance, gesturing to him from beside the statue. Harry hastened to join them. You got in all right then? Hermione whispered to Harry. Oh, I'm gonna do the voices, right?
Wispy. You got in all right then?
Hermione whispered to Harry. No, he's still stuck on the bog, said Ron. Oh, very funny. It's horrible, isn't it? Oh no.
Very funny. It's horrible, isn't it?
She said to Harry, who was staring up at the statue.
Have you seen what they're sitting on?
Harry looked more closely and realized that What he had thought were decoratively carved thrones were actually mounds of carved humans. Hundreds and hundreds of naked bodies. Men, women and children, all with rather stupid, ugly faces, twisted and pressed together to support the weight of the handsomely robed wizards. Okay, now. So who was the person who thought up this design, huh? Who was the person who was like, you know what? Let's get them sitting on a whole bunch of people? Oh. And make them naked.
Muggles, whispered Hermione, in their rightful place. Come on, let's get going.
They joined the stream of witches and wizards moving toward the golden gates at the end of the hall, looking around as surreptitiously as possible, but there was no sign of the distinctive figure of Dolores Umbridge. This got dark quick. I gotta do the voices, right? We go from flushing ourselves down a toilet to this in about 4 sentences. That's true. That's a lot. Why are they naked, though? Why are they naked? Hey? What, did you do that on purpose?
Oh, yeah?
But why?
I just thought it would look badass.
Yeah, but we got to work here. We've got to look at this thing every day now. We'll go walk past and see people's willies and VVs, you know? I don't want that.
Well, still badass, though.
Yeah, but come on now. Come on, mate. It's gross. They joined the... Okay, yeah, there we go. They passed through the gates and into a smaller hall, where queues were forming in front of 20 golden grills housing as many lifts. They'd barely joined the nearest one when a voice said, "Catamole!" They looked around. Harry's stomach turned over. One of the Death Eaters who had witnessed Dumbledore's death was striding towards them. Oh. The ministry workers beside them... remind me who this dude was. Oh, yeah. One of the guys standing there. Harry could feel fear. The ministry workers beside them fell silent, their eyes downcast. Let's change up the music, shall we? Harry could feel fear rippling through them. The man's scowling, slightly brutish face was somehow at odds with his magnificent sweeping robes, which were embroidered with much gold thread. Someone in the crowd around the lifts called sycophantically... What does that mean again? "Morning, Yaxley!" Yaxley ignored them.
I requested somebody from magical maintenance to sort out my office, Catamo. It's still raining in there.
Is that the right voice? If not, I'm open for some correction on it. Ain't nothing wrong or gross about nakedness. No, but people do find it... there are people who do find it gross. Thank you, Jocelyn. Sycophant like a Harry Potter superfan. Sycophant. Behaving or done in an obsequious way in order to gain advantage. Okay, a little deeper. Okay. Ron looked around as though hoping somebody else would intervene, but nobody spoke.
Raining? In your office? That's not good, is it?
Ron gave a nervous laugh. Yaxley's eyes widened.
You think it's funny, Catamo? Do you?
A pair of witches broke away from the queue for the lift and bustled off.
No, said Ron. No. Of course, you realise that I'm on my way downstairs to interrogate your wife, Catamo. In fact, I'm quite surprised you're not down to holding her hand while she waits. Already given her up as a bad job, have you? Probably wise. Be sure and marry a pure blood next time.
Hermione had let out a little squeak of horror. Yaxley looked at her. She coughed feebly and turned away. I stammered Ron.
But if my wife were accused of being a mudblood, said Yaxley, not that any woman I married would ever be mistaken for such filth, and the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement needed a job doing, I would make it my priority to do that job, Catamo. Do you understand me?
Yes, whispered Ron.
Then attend to it, Catamo. And if my office is not completely dry within an hour, your wife's blood status will be in even graver doubt than it is now.
Ooh, this guy This guy's... there's a wife downstairs who's about to die. Oh man. Okay. The golden grill before them clattered open with a nod and unpleasant smile to Harry, who was evidently expected to appreciate this treatment of Cattermole. He actually swept away towards another lift. Close call. Harry, Ron, and Hermione entered theirs, but nobody followed them. It was as if they were infectious. The grills shut with a clang, and the lift began to move upwards. What am I going to do? Ron asked the other two at once. He looked stricken. If I don't turn up, my wife, Cattermole's wife...
We'll come with you. We should stick together,
began Harry. Began Harry, but Ron shook his head feverishly.
That's mental. We haven't got much time. You two find Umbridge. I'll go and sort out Yaxie's office. But how do I stop it raining?
Try finite incantatum,
said Hermione at once.
That should stop the rain if it's a hex or curse. If it doesn't, something's gone wrong with an atmospheric charm, which will be more difficult to fix. So as an interim measure, try impervious to protect his belongings.
Say it again. Slowly,
said Ron, searching his pockets desperately for a quill. But at that moment, the lift juddered to a halt. Juddered. Love that word. So good. A disembodied female voice said,
Level 4. Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures, incorporating Beast, Being, and Spirit Divisions. Goblin Liaison Office and Pest Advisory Bureau.
Okay, what's on this level? Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures, incorporating Beast, Being, and Spirit Divisions, Goblin Liaison and Pest Advisory Bureau. And the grills slid open again, admitting a couple of wizards and several pale violet paper airplanes that fluttered around the lamp in the ceiling of the lift. Bushily whiskered man. Okay, bushily.
Morning, Albert,
said a bushily whiskered man, smiling at Harry. He glanced over at Ron. That sounded like a Western British person.
Morning, Albert. Morning, Albert.
He glanced over at Ron and Hermione as the lift creaked upwards once more. Hermione was now whispering frantic instructions to Ron. The wizard leaned towards Harry, leering and muttering.
Dirk Kurzweil, eh? From Goblin Liaison. Nice one, Albert. I'm pretty confident I'll get his job now.
Oh gosh, that one went all over the place. Oh. He winked. Harry smiled back, hoping that this would suffice. The lift stopped. The grills opened once more.
Level 2. Department of Magical Law Enforcement, including the improper use of Magic Office, Aura Headquarters, and Wizengamot Administration Services, said the disembodied witch's voice. Harry saw Hermione give Ron a little push, and he hurried out of the lift, followed by the other wizards, leaving Harry and Hermione alone. The moment the golden door had closed, Hermione said very fast, Actually, Harry, I think I'd better go after him. I don't think he knows what he's doing, and if he gets caught up in the whole thing... Level 1. Minister for Magic and Support Staff. The golden grills slid apart again, and Hermione gasped. 4 people stood before them, 2 of them deep in conversation. A long-haired wizard wearing magnificent robes of black and gold, and a squat, toad-like witch wearing a velvet bow in her short hair and clutching a clipboard to her chest. Long-haired wizard. Is that Snoop? I know it's Umbridge, or Dumbridge. I'm wondering if that's Snoop. Yeah, boo!
Boo! Go on, get out of here! Boo! Get off the stage!
You're like Dumbridge.
It switches over to Harry's to Dexter's camera every single time. It's like, as if we're booing Dexter. I feel really bad about that. I'm gonna change that up right now so that does not happen ever again. There we go. Fixed it. No, Dexty! What is it, boo Dexter? Yeah, poor Dex. He looks so sad when you yell at him. Okay, that was the end of the chapter. Chapter 13, the Muggle-Born Registration Commission. We're going to keep on going here. Umbridge. No. Stupid Umbridge.
Mafalda,
Said Umbridge, looking at Hermione.
Travis sent you, did he?
She's back. She's back? Where's she back? No!
Yes,
Squeaked Hermione.
good. You'll do perfectly well.
Hermione. Umbridge spoke to the wizard in black and gold.
That's the problem solved, Minister. If Mafalda can be spared for record keeping, we shall be able to start straight away.
She consulted her clipboard.
10 people today, and one of them the wife of a ministry employee. Tut tut. Even here, in the heart of the ministry.
She stepped into the lift beside Hermione. As did the two wizards who had been listening to Umbridge's conversation with the minister.
We'll go straight down, Mafalda. You'll find everything you need in the courtroom. Good morning, Albert. Aren't you getting out?
Yes, of course.
Said Harry in Runcorn's deep voice. Oh man, Harry stepped out of the lift. The golden grills clanged shut behind him. Glancing over his shoulder, Harry saw Hermione's anxious face sinking back out of sight. A tall wizard on either side of her, Umbridge's velvet hair bow level with her shoulder. Okay, the new Minister for Magic. Do we know this person yet? What was I completely forget who the person is that stepped in. Thickness. We don't know this guy, right? Okay, if you can give some adjectives for this dude based on the books, without spoiling anything about what's coming up or giving me anything else, just adjectives. That's all I need. I can give this guy. I can find a voice for this. So I'm not going to look at the bottom here. This is thicknessy. Thick boy. Thick with 2 C's. In the table with... Okay, I'm just going to give him a voice for now and then see what adjectives you come up with. What brings you up here, Runcorn? Asked the new Minister for Magic. His long black hair and beard were streaked with silver, and a great overhanging forehead shadowed his glinting eyes, putting Harry in mind of a crab looking out from beneath a rock.
Needed a quick word with.
I don't know, it's so funny to me. Harry saying that, like,
Needed a quick word with.
Harry hesitated for a fraction of a second.
Arthur Weasley. Someone said he was up on level 1.
Ah, said pious Thicknessy. Has he been caught having contact with an undesirable?
No,
said Harry, his throat dry.
no. Nothing like that.
Ah, well, it's only a matter of time, said Thicknessy. If you ask me, the blood traitors are as bad as the mudbloods. Good day, Runcorn.
Good day, Minister.
Harry watched Thicknessy march away along the thickly carpeted corridor. The moment the minister had passed out of sight, Harry tugged the invisibility cloak out from under his heavy black cloak, threw it over himself, and set off along the corridor in the opposite direction. Runcorn was so tall that Harry was forced to stoop to make sure his big feet were hidden. The voice is fine. Okay, great. Panic pulsed in the pit of his stomach. As he passed gleaming wooden door after gleaming wooden door, each bearing... let's change it up here. Yeah, there we go. Each bearing a small plaque with the owner's name and occupation upon it, the might of the ministry, its complexity, its impenetrability, seemed to force themselves upon him, so that the plan he had been carefully concocting with Ron and Hermione over the past 4 weeks seemed laughably childish. They had concentrated all their efforts on getting inside without being detected. They had not given a moment's thought to what they would do if they were forced to separate. Now Hermione was stuck in court proceedings, which would undoubtedly last hours. Ron was struggling to do magic that Harry was sure was but beyond him. A woman's liberty possibly depending on the outcome. And he, Harry, was wandering around on the top floor when he knew perfectly well that his quarry had just gone down in the lift. He stopped walking, leaned against a wall, and tried to decide what to do. The silence pressed upon him. There was no bustling or talk or swift footsteps here. The purple carpeted corridors were as hushed as though the Muffliato charm had been cast over the place. Her office must be up here, Harry thought. It seemed most unlikely that Umbridge would keep her jewelry in her office, but on the other hand, it seemed foolish not to search it to make sure. He therefore set off along the corridor again, passing nobody but a frowning wizard, who was murmuring instructions to a quill that floated in front of him, scribbling on a trail of parchment. Now paying attention to the names on the doors, Harry turned a corner. Halfway along the next corridor, he emerged into a wide, open space, where a dozen witches and wizards sat in rows at small desks, not unlike school desks. Okay. Though much more highly polished and free from graffiti. Have another school here? Harry paused to watch them, for the effect was quite mesmerizing. They were all waving and twiddling their wands in unison, and squares of colored paper were flying in every direction like little pink kites. After a few seconds, Harry realized that there was a rhythm to the proceedings, that the papers all formed the same pattern. And after a few more seconds, he realized that what he was watching was the creation of pamphlets, that the paper squares were pages, which then assembled, folded, and magicked into place, fell into neat stacks beside each witch a wizard. Okay, so propaganda. Sending out propaganda to everybody who's a witch or a wizard to overpower those muggles. Also, this is one of those situations where you could have just, used a printer from the muggle world. You could have just maybe learned how to use that. You're wasting a lot of people's time. Harry crept closer, although the workers were so intent on what they were doing that he doubted they would notice a carpet-muffled footstep, and he slid a completed pamphlet from the pile beside a young witch. He examined it beneath the invisibility cloak. Its pink cover was emblazoned with a golden title. Mudbloods, and the dangers they pose to a peaceful, pure blood society. This is totally Nazis. Beneath the title was a picture of a red rose, with a simpering face in the middle of its petals, being strangled by a green weed with fangs and a scowl. A bit overt. A bit overt. Has anybody seen the... what is it called? I forget the show, but it's the two comedians and they're playing Nazis, and he goes, I just want to ask you a question. Are we the baddies? We've got skulls on our hats and all these symbols. Are we the baddies? Like this? If you're on the bad side, you're just like strangling a rose with green weeds and a fang and a scowl. Mitchell and Webb. Yes. Okay. There was no author's name upon the pamphlet, but again, the scars on the back of his right hand seemed to tingle as he examined it. Then the young witch beside him confirmed his suspicion as she said, still waving and twirling her wand. Oh, some young witch. Will the old hag be interrogating mudbloods all day? Does anyone know? Careful, said the wizard beside her, glancing around nervously. One of his pages slipped and fell to the floor. What? Has she got magic ears as well as an eye now? The witch glanced towards the shining mahogany door, facing the space full of pamphlet makers. Harry looked too, and rage reared in him like a snake. Where there might have been a peephole on a muggle front door, a large, round eye with a bright blue iris had been set into the wood, an eye that was shockingly familiar to anybody who had known Alistair Moody. What? Did he betray them or something? What? I'm a bit confused, and don't fix it for me if it's not explained yet. For a split second, Harry forgot where he was and what he was doing there. He even forgot that he was invisible.
He strode straight over to the door to examine the eye. It was not moving. It gazed blindly upwards, frozen. The plaque beneath it read, Dolores Umbridge, Senior Under Secretary to the Minister. Below that, a slightly shinier new plaque read, Head of the Muggle-Born Registration Commission. Harry looked back at the dozen pamphlet makers. Though they were intent upon their work, he could hardly suppose that they would not notice if the door of an empty office opened in front of them. He therefore withdrew from an inner pocket an odd object with little waving legs and a rubber-bulbed horn for a body. Crouching down beneath the cloak, he placed the decoy detonator on the ground. Oh, clever. Clever. It scuttled away at once through the legs of the witches and wizards in front of him. A few moments later, during which Harry waited with his hands upon the doorknob, there came a loud bang, and a great deal of acrid black smoke billowed from a corner. The young witch in the front row shrieked. Pink pages flew everywhere as she and her fellows jumped up, looking around for the source of the commotion. Harry turned the doorknob, stepped into Umbridge's office, and closed the door behind him. He felt he had stepped back in time. The room was exactly like Umbridge's office at Hogwarts. Lace draperies, doilies, and dried flowers covered every available surface. The walls bore the same ornamental plates, each featuring a highly colored berry-bond kitten, gambolling and frisking with sickening cuteness. The desk was covered with a flouncy flowered cloth. Behind Mad Eye's eye, a telescopic attachment enabled Umbridge to spy on the workers on the other side of the door. Ugh! She is just the worst. She's just the worst. Harry took a look through it and saw that they were all still gathered around the decoy detonator. He wrenched the telescope out of the door, leaving a hole behind it, pulled the magical eyeball out of it, and placed it in his pocket. Then he turned to face the room again. Oh, wow, he's just taking the eye, huh? Just taking that eye. Then he turned to face the room again, raised his wand, and murmured, Accio Locket. Nothing happened, but he had not expected it to. No doubt Umbridge knew all about protective charms and spells. He therefore hurried behind her desk and began pulling... That's a bit too intense for this moment, so I'm just going to go back to the beginning. He therefore hurried behind her desk and began pulling open the drawers. He saw quills and notebooks and spellotape, enchanted paper clips that coiled snake-like from their drawer and had to be beaten back. A fussy little lace box full of spare hair bows and clips, but no sign of a locket. Ah, she's got the locket. I'm so pissed at her. There was a filing cabinet behind the desk. Harry set to searching it. Like Filch's filing cabinet at Hogwarts, it was full of folders, each labeled with a name. It was not until Harry reached the bottommost drawer that he saw something to distract him from his search. Mr. Weasley's file. He pulled it out and opened it. So, Arthur Weasley, blood status, pure blood, but with I'm going to do this in her voice. Blood status, pure blood, but with unacceptable pro-Muggle leanings. Known member of the Order of the Phoenix. Family, wife, pure blood, 7 children, 2 youngest at Hogwarts. NB, what's NB? Youngest son currently at home, seriously ill. Ministry inspectors have confirmed. Security status, tracked. All movements are being monitored. Strong likelihood undesirable number 1 will contact. Has stayed with Weasley family previously. Oh, gosh. NB. What does NB stand for? Undesirable number 1, Harry muttered under his breath as he replaced Mr. Weasley's folder and shut the drawer. He had an idea he knew who that was, and sure enough, as he straightened up and glanced around the office for fresh hiding places, he saw a poster of himself on the wall, with the words Undesirable number 1 emblazoned across his chest. A little pink note was stuck to it,
with a picture of a kitten in the corner. Harry moved across to read it and saw that Umbridge had written, "To be punished." She's obsessed probably now. She's obsessed probably with getting him. NB, nota bene, meaning note well. It is used to emphasize an important point. Thank you, Lois. Angrier than ever, he proceeded to grope in the bottoms of the vases and baskets of dried flowers, but was not at all surprised that the locket was not there. He gave the office one last sweeping look, and his heart skipped a beat. Dumbledore was staring at him from a small rectangular mirror propped up on a bookcase beside the desk. What? What's going on? Harry crossed the room at a run and snatched it up, but realized the moment he touched it that it was not a mirror at all. Dumbledore was smiling wistfully out of the front cover of a glossy book. Okay. I thought this was something crazy would be happening right there. Harry had not immediately noticed the curly green writing across his hat, the lies and lives of Albus Dumbledore, nor the slightly smaller writing across his chest by Rita Skeeter, best-selling author of Armando Dippet, Master or Moron. I want Rita Skeeter to throw herself into a wood chipper! Harry opened the book at random and saw a full-page photograph of two teenage boys, both laughing immoderately with their arms around each other's shoulder. Dumbledore, now with elbow-length hair, had grown a tiny wispy beard that recalled the one on Crum's chin that had so annoyed Ron. The boy who roared in silent amusement beside Dumbledore had a gleeful, wild look about him. His golden hair fell in curls to his shoulders. Harry wondered whether it was a young doge, but before he could check the caption, the door of the office opened. Totally didn't butcher that title, did I? I probably did. Harry opened the book at random and saw a full-page photograph of two teenage boys, both laughing immoderately with their arms around each other's shoulders. Oh wait, I already read that. If Thicknessy had not been looking over his shoulder as he entered, Harry would not have had time to pull the invisibility cloak over himself. As it was, we're gonna get some secret conversation going on here. As it was, he thought Thicknessy might have caught a glimpse of movement because, for a moment or two, he remained quite still, staring curiously at the place where Harry had just vanished. Perhaps deciding that all he had seen was Dumbledore scratching his nose in the front of the book, for Harry had hastily replaced it upon the shelf. Thicknessy finally walked to the desk and pointed his wand at the quill standing ready in the inkpot. It sprang out and began scribbling a note to Umbridge. Very slowly, hardly daring to breathe, Harry backed out of the office into the open area beyond. The pamphlet makers were still clustered around the remains of the decoy detonator, which continued to hoot feebly as it smoked. Harry hurried off up the corridor as the young witch said, "I bet it sneaked up here from experimental charms. They're so careless. Remember that poisonous duck?" Speeding back towards the lift. Poisonous duck. He got it enough. John does not have to get everything on his first read, as most of us didn't either. Sometimes gets it without commenting on it. Thanks, Lois. Speeding back towards the lifts, Harry reviewed his options. It had never been likely that the locket was here at the Ministry, and there was no hope of bewitching its whereabouts out of Umbridge while she was sitting in a crowded court. Their priority now had to be to leave the Ministry before they were exposed, and try again another day. The first thing to do was to find Ron, and then they could work out a way of extracting Hermione from the courtroom. The lift was empty when it arrived. Harry jumped in and pulled off the invisibility cloak as it started to its descent. To his enormous relief, when it rattled to a halt at level 2, a soaking wet and wild-eyed Ron got in. "Morning," he stammered to Harry as the lift set off again.
Ron, it's me, Harry.
Harry, blimey, forgot what you looked like. Why isn't Hermione with you?
She had to go down to the courtroom with Umbridge. She couldn't refuse. And
before Harry speaking like that is so funny. But before Harry could finish, the lift had stopped again. The doors opened, and Mr. Weasley walked inside, talking to an elderly witch whose blonde hair was teased so high it resembled an anthill. That's crazy.
I quite understand what they're saying, Wakanda, but I'm afraid I cannot be party to...
Mr. Weasley broke off. He had noticed Harry. It was very strange to have Mr. Weasley glare at him with that much dislike. The lift doors closed, and the four of them trundled downwards once more.
Oh, hello, Greg,
said Mr. Weasley, looking around at the sound of steady dripping from Ron's rose.
Isn't your wife in for questioning today? What's happened to you? Why are you so wet?
Yaxley's office is raining,
said Ron. He addressed Mr. Weasley's shoulder, and Harry felt sure he was scared that his father might recognize him if they looked directly into each other's eyes.
I couldn't stop it, so they sent me to get Bernie. Pillsworth, I think they said.
Yes, a lot of offices have been raining lately,
said Mr. Weasley.
Did you try Meteorologix Recanto? It worked for Bletchley.
Meteorologix Recanto, whispered Ron. Oh, I didn't.
Thanks, Arthur.
The lift doors opened. The old witch with the anthill hair left, and Ron darted past her out of sight. Harry made to follow him, but found his path blocked as Percy Weasley strode into the lift, his nose buried in some papers he was reading. Wakanda Forever! Yes, I love that movie. I watched it recently again. One of the best Marvel villains ever. Not until the doors had clanged shut again did Percy realize he was in a lift with his father. Wait, what? Oh, what? Oh, okay. Harry made to follow him, but found his path blocked as Percy Weasley strode into the lift, his nose buried in some papers he was reading. Percy Weasley. That jerk. Oh, awkward situation's gonna come up here, huh? Not until the doors had clanged shut again did Percy realize he was in a lift with his father. He glanced up, saw Mr. Weasley, turned radish red, and left the lift the moment the doors opened again. For the second time, Harry tried to get out, but this time found his way blocked by Mr. Weasley's arm.
One moment, Runcorn.
The lift doors closed, and as they clanked down another floor, Mr. Weasley said,
I hear you laid information about Dirk Cresswell.
Harry had the impression that Mr. Weasley's... he's angry. Of course. Mr. Weasley's anger was no less because of the brush with Percy. He decided his best chance was to act stupid.
Sorry,
he said.
Don't pretend, Runcorn,
said Mr. Weasley fiercely.
You tracked down the wizard who faked his family tree, didn't you? So what if I did?
Said Harry.
So, Dirk Cresswell is 10 times the wizard you are.
No, quietly.
So, Dirk Cresswell is 10 times the wizard you are,
said Mr. Weasley quietly, as the lift sank even lower.
And if he survives Azkaban, you'll have to answer to him, not to mention his wife, his sons, and his friends.
Arthur,
Harry interrupted.
You know you're being tracked, don't you?
Is that a threat, Runcorn?
Said Mr. Weasley loudly.
No, said Harry. It is a fact. They're watching your every move.
The lift doors opened. They had reached the atrium. Mr. Weasley gave Harry a scathing look and swept from the lift. Harry stood there, shaken. He wished he was impersonating somebody other than Runcorn. The lift doors clanged shut. Harry pulled out the invisibility cloak and put it back on. He would try to extricate Hermione on his own while Ron was dealing with the reigning office. When the doors opened, he stepped out into a torchlit stone passageway, quite different from the wood-paneled and carpeted corridors above. As the lift rattled again, Harry shivered slightly, looking towards the distant black door that marked the entrance to the Department of Mysteries. He set off, his destination not to the black door, but the doorway he remembered on the left-hand side, which opened onto the flight of stairs down to the court chambers. His mind grappled with possibilities as he crept down them. He still had a couple of decoy decanters, but Perhaps it would be better to simply knock on the courtroom door, enter as Runcorn, and ask for a quick word with Mafalda. Of course, he did not know whether Runcorn was sufficiently important to get away with this, and even if he managed it, Hermione's non-reappearance might trigger a search before they were clear of the Ministry. Lost in thought, he did not immediately register the unnatural chill that was creeping over him as if he were descending into fog. It was becoming colder and colder with every step he took. A cold that had reached right down into his throat and tore at his lungs. And then he felt that stealing sense of despair, of hopelessness, filling him, expanding inside him. Dementors, he thought. Jeez, that too? I gotta deal with all this. And as he reached the foot of the stairs and turned to his right, he saw a dreadful scene. The dark passageway outside the courtrooms was packed with tall, black, hooded figures, their faces completely hidden, their ragged breathing the only sound in the place. The petrified Muggle-borns brought in for questioning sat huddled and shivering on hard wooden benches. Most of them were hiding their faces in their hands, perhaps in an instinctive attempt to shield themselves from the Dementors' greedy mouths. Some were accompanied by families, others sat alone. The Dementors were gliding up and down in front of them, and the cold and the hopelessness and the despair of the place laid themselves upon Harry like a curse. Fight it, he told himself. But he knew that he could not conjure a Patronus here without revealing himself instantly. So he moved forwards as silently as he could, and with every step he took, numbness seemed to steal over his brain. But he forced himself to think of Hermione and of Ron, who needed him. Phoo-wee. Moving through the towering black figures was terrifying. The eyeless faces, hidden beneath their hoods, turned as he passed, and he felt sure that they sensed him, sensed, perhaps, a human presence that still had some hope, some resilience. And then, abruptly and shockingly, amid the frozen silence, one of the dungeon doors on the left of the corridor was flung open, and screams echoed after it.
No, no, I'm half-blood, I tell you! My father was a wizard, he was! Look him up! Archie Alderton, he was a well-known broomstick designer, look him up! I tell you, get your hands off me, get your hands off me!
This is your final warning,
said Umbridge's soft voice, magically magnified so that it sounded clearly over the man's desperate screams.
If you struggle, you will be subjected to the Mentor's kiss.
Oh. The man's screams subsided, but dry sobs echoed through the corridor.
Take him away,
said Umbridge. Two Dementors appeared in the doorway of the courtroom, their rotting, scabbed hands clutching the upper arms of the wizard, who appeared to be fainting. They glided away down the corridor with him, and the darkness that they trailed behind them swallowed him from sight.
Next, Mary Catamo,
called Umbridge. A small woman stood up. She was trembling from head to foot. Her dark hair was smoothed back into a bun, and she wore long, plain robes. Her face was completely bloodless. As she passed the Dementors, Harry saw her shudder. He did it instinctively, without any sort of plan, because he hated the sight of her walking alone into the dungeon. As the door began to swing closed, he slipped into the courtroom behind her. Risky business, just risking, dude. It was not the same room in which he had once been interrogated for improper use of magic. This one was much smaller, though the ceiling was quite as high. It gave the claustrophobic sense of being stuck at the bottom of a deep well. There were Dementors in here. Oh, how is he going to get out of this? Casting their freezing aura over the place. They stood like faceless sentinels in the corners furthest from the high, raised platform. Here, behind a balustrade, sat Umbridge, with Yaxley on one side of her, and Hermione, quite as white-faced as Mrs. Catamo, on the other. At the foot of the platform, a bright silver, long-haired cat prowled up and down, and Harry realized that it was there to protect the prosecutors from the despair that emanated from the Dementors. That was for the accused to feel, not the accusers. Oh, jeez.
Sit down,
said Umbridge in her soft, silky voice. Mrs. Cattermole stumbled to the single seat in the middle of the floor beneath the raised platform. The moment she had sat down, chains clinked out of the arms of the chair and bound her there.
You are Mary Elizabeth Cattermole?
Asked Umbridge. Mrs. Cattermole gave a single shaky nod.
Married to Reginald Cattermole of the Magical Maintenance Department?
Mrs. Cattermole burst into tears.
I don't know where he is. He was supposed to meet me here.
Umbridge ignored her.
Mother to Maisie, Ellie, and Alfred Cattermole?
Mrs. Cattermole sobbed harder than ever.
They're frightened. They think I might not come home.
Spare us, spat Yaxley. The brats of mudbloods do not stir our sympathies.
Mrs. Cattermole's sobs masked Harry's footsteps as he made his way carefully towards the steps that led up to the raised platform. The moment he had passed the place where the Patronus cat patrolled, he felt the change in temperature. It was warm and comfortable here. The Patronus, he was sure, was Umbridge's, and it glowed brightly because she was so happy here, in her element, upholding the twisted laws she had helped to write. Slowly, oh, this is so messed up. This whole thing is messed up. It's all messed up. This woman is even more evil than I thought. Slowly and very carefully, he edged his way along the platform behind Umbridge, Yaxley and Hermione taking a seat behind the latter. He was worried about making Hermione jump. He thought of casting the Muffliato charm upon Umbridge and Yaxley, but even murmuring the word might cause Hermione alarm. Then Umbridge raised her voice to address Mrs. Cattermole, and Harry seized his chance.
I'm behind you,
he whispered into Hermione's ear. As he had expected, she jumped so violently she nearly overturned the bottle of ink with which she was supposed to be recording the interview. But both Umbridge and Yaxley were concentrating upon Mrs. Cattermole, and this went unnoticed.
A wand was taken from you upon your arrival at the ministry today, Mrs. Cattermole,
Umbridge was saying.
8 3/4 inches cherry, unicorn, hair core. Do you recognize that description?
Mrs. Cattermole nodded, mopping her eyes on her sleeve.
Could you please tell us from which witch or wizard you took that wand? Took?
Sobbed Mrs. Cattermole.
I didn't take it from anyone. I bought it when I was 11 years old. It chose me.
She cried harder than ever. Umbridge laughed a soft, girlish laugh that made Harry want to attack her. She leaned forwards over the banister, the better to observe her victim, and something gold swung forwards too and daggled over the void. The locket. The locket. The locket is there. Okay. Hermione had seen it. She let out a little squeak, but Umbridge and Yaxley, still intent upon their prey. How are they going to get it off her throat? Choke her to death. We're deaf to everything else.
No,
said Umbridge.
No, I don't think so, Mrs. Cattermole. Wands only choose witches or wizards. You are not a witch. I have your responses to the questionnaire that was sent to you here, Mafalda. Pass them to me.
Umbridge held out a small hand. She looked so toad-like at that moment that Harry was quite surprised not to see webs between the stubby fingers. Hermione's hand... This is pretty intense music. Is this too much? Is too much? Or not? Hermione's hands were shaking with shock. She fumbled in a pile of documents balanced in the chair beside her, finally withdrawing a wad of parchment with Mrs. Cattermole's name on it. No, it's great. Nora is great. No, okay, cool.
That's pretty.
Oh, wait.
That's pretty, Dolores,
she said.
pointing at the pendant gleaming in the ruffled folds of Umbridge's blouse.
What?
Snapped Umbridge, glancing down.
Oh, yes, an old family heirloom.
She said, patting the locket behind, the locket lying on her large bosom.
The S stands for Selwyn.
Little loud. Okay, I'll turn that music a little bit, because it's a bit loud for me too. There we go. It's a a titch quieter. Titch quieter, huh? There we go.
Oh, yes, an old family heirloom. The S stands for Selwyn. I am related to the Selwyns. Indeed, there are few pure blood families to whom I am not related. A pity,
she continued in a louder voice, flicking through Mrs. Cattermole's questionnaire.
That the same cannot be said for you. Parents' professions. Greengrocers.
Yaxley laughed jeeringly. But below, the fluffy silver cat patrolled up and down, and the Dementors stood waiting in the corners. It was Umbridge's lie that brought the blood surging into Harry's brain, and it obliterated his sense of caution. No, Harry! That the locket she had taken as a bribe from a petty criminal was being used to bolster her own pure blood credentials. He raised his wand, not even troubling to keep it concealed but not beneath this invisibility cloak, and said, "Stupefy." Why the hell are you doing this, you idiots? Come on, Harry! It was a flash of red light. Umbridge crumpled, and her forehead hit the edge of the balustrade. Ah! Mrs. Cattermole's papers slid off her lap onto the floor, and down below, the prowling silver cat vanished. Ice-cold air hit them like an oncoming wind. Yaxley, confused, looked around for the source of the trouble and saw Harry's disembodied hand and wand pointing at him. He tried to draw his own wand, but too late.
Stupefy!
Yaxley slid to the ground to lie curled on the floor. Crazy.
Harry!
Hermione, if you think I was going to sit here and let her pretend...
Harry! Mrs. Cattermole!
Harry whirled around, throwing off the invisibility cloak. Down below, the Dementors had moved out of their corners. They were gliding towards the woman chained to the chair. Whether because the Patronus had vanished, or because they sensed that their masters were no longer in control, they seemed to have abandoned restraint. Mrs. Cattermole let out a terrible scream of fear as a slimy, scabbed hand grasped her chin and forced her head back.
Expecto Patronum!
The silver stag soared from the tip of Harry's wand and leapt towards the Dementors, which fell back and melted into the dark shadows again. The stag's light, more powerful and more warming than the cat's protection, filled the whole dungeon as it cantered round and round the room.
Get the Horcrux,
Harry told Hermione. He ran back down the steps, stuffing the invisibility cloak back into his bag and approaching Mrs. Cattermole.
You,
she whispered, gazing into his face.
But Rick said you were the one who submitted my name for questioning.
Did I?
Muttered Harry, tugging at the chains binding her arms.
Well, I've had a change of heart. Diffindo!
Nothing happened.
Hermione, how do I get rid of these chains?
Wait, I'm trying something up here.
Hermione, we're surrounded by Dementors.
I know that, Harry, but if she wakes up and the locket's gone, I need to duplicate it. Geminio. There, that should fool her.
Clever, 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 clever. What a boss! Hermione came running downstairs.
Let's see. Relatio.
The chains clinked and withdrew into the arms of the chair. Mrs. Cattermole looked just as frightened as before.
I don't understand,
she whispered.
You're going to leave here with us,
said Harry, pulling her to her feet.
Go home, grab your children, and get out. Get out of the country if you've got to. Disguise yourselves and run. You've seen how it is. You won't get anything like a fair hearing here.
Harry,
said Hermione.
How are we going to get out of here with all these Dementors outside the door?
Patronuses,
said Harry, pointing his wand at his own. The stag slowed and walked, still gleaming brightly, towards the door.
As many as we can muster. Do yours, Hermione.
Expecto Patronum,
said Hermione. Nothing happened.
It's the only spell she ever has trouble with,
Harry told the completely bemused Mrs. Cattermole.
A bit unfortunate, really. Come on, Hermione.
Expecto Patronum,
A silver otter burst from the end of Hermione's wand and swam gracefully through the air to join the stag.
Come on,
said Harry, and he led Hermione and Mrs. Cattermole to the door. When the Patronuses glided out of the dungeon, there were cries of shock from the people waiting outside. Harry looked around. The Dementors were falling back on both sides of them, melding into the darkness, scattering before the silver creatures.
it's been decided that you shall all go home and go into hiding with your families.
Harry told the waiting Muggleborns, who were dazzled.
This is so badass, by the way, that they're doing this right now. This is crazy.
Go abroad if you can. Just get well away from the Ministry. That's the, new official position. Now, if we'll just follow the Patronuses, you'll be able to leave from the atrium.
They managed to get up the stone steps without being intercepted, but as they approached the lifts, Harry started to have misgivings. If they emerged into the atrium with a silver stag and otters soaring alongside it, and 20 or so people, half of them accused Muggleborns, he could not help feeling that they would attract unwanted attention. He had just reached this unwelcome conclusion when the lift clanged to a halt in front of them. "Oh, Reg!" screamed Mrs. Cattermole, and she threw herself into Ron's arms.
Oh, right. Crazy.
Runcorn let me out. He attacked Umbridge and Yaxley, and he's told all of us to leave the country. I think we better do it, Reg. I really do. Let's hurry home and fetch the children and... Why are you so wet?
Water, muttered Ron, disengaging himself. Harry, they knew there were intruders inside the Ministry. Oh, he said Harry! He said Harry! Something about a hole in Umbridge's office door. I reckon we've got 5 minutes if that... Hermione's Patronus vanished with a pop as she turned a horror-struck face to Harry. Oh no.
Harry, if we're trapped here...
We won't be if we move fast,
said Harry. He addressed the silent group behind them, who were all gawping at him.
Who's got wands?
But half of them raised their hands.
Okay, all of you who haven't got wands need to attach yourself to somebody who has. We'll need to be fast, before they stop us. Come on.
They managed to cram themselves into 2 lifts. Harry's Patronus stood sentinel before the golden grills as they shut and the lifts began to rise. "Level 8, said the witch's cool voice. "Atrium." Harry knew at once they were in trouble. The atrium was full of people moving from fireplace to fireplace, sealing them off.
"Harry!"
squeaked Hermione.
"What are we going to..."
Stop!
Harry thundered, and the powerful voice of Runcorn echoed through the atrium. The wizards sealing the fireplaces froze.
Follow me,
he whispered to the group of terrified Muggleborns, who moved forwards in a huddle, shepherded by Ron and Hermione. This is insane. This is so crazy.
"What's up, Albert?"
said the same balding wizard who had followed Harry out of the fireplace earlier. He looked nervous.
This lot need to leave before you seal the exits,
said Harry, with all the authority he could muster. The group of wizards in front of him looked at one another.
We've been told to seal all exits and not let anyone...
Are you contradicting me?
Harry blustered.
Would you like me to have your family tree examined, like I had Dirk Cresswell's?
Sorry,
gasped the balding wizard, backing away.
I didn't mean nothing, Albert, but I thought... I thought they were in for questioning and...
The blood is pure,
said Harry, and his deep voice echoed impressively through the hall.
Purer than many of yours, I dare say. Off you go!
He boomed to the Muggleborns, who scurried forwards into the fireplaces and began to vanish in pairs. The Ministry wizards hung back, some looking confused, others scared and resentful. Then, Mary! Mrs. Cattermole looked over her shoulder. The real Reg Cattermole, no longer vomiting, but pale and wan, had just come running out of a lift.
"Reg?"
She looked from her husband to Ron, who swore loudly. The balding wizard gaped, his head turning ludicrously from one Greg Cattermole to the other.
Hey, what's going on? What is this?
Seal the exit.
Oh, no, this is somebody else.
Hey, what is going on? What is this?
Seal the exit! Sealed it!
Yaxley had burst out of another lift, and was running towards the group beside the fireplaces, into which all the Muggleborns, but Mrs. Cattermole had now vanished. As the balding wizard lifted his wand, Harry raised an enormous fist and punched him. Yes, he did. He punched him right in the face, sending him flying through the air.
He's been helping Muggleborns escape, Yaxley.
Quick thinking, Harry shouted. The balding wizard's colleagues set up an uproar, under cover of which Ron grabbed Mrs. Cattermole, pulled her into the still open fireplace, and disappeared. Confused, he actually looked from Harry to the punched wizard, while the Reg Cattermole screamed,
My wife! Who was that with my wife? What's going on?
Harry saw Yaxley's head turn, saw an inkling of the truth dawn in that brutish face.
Come on!
Harry shouted at Hermione. He seized her hand, and they jumped into the fireplace together as Yaxley's curse sailed over Harry's head. They spun for a few seconds before shooting up out of a toilet into a cubicle. Harry flung open the door. Ron was standing there beside the sinks, still wrestling with Mrs. Cattermole.
Reg, I don't understand.
Let go, I'm not your husband. You've got to go home.
There was a noise in the cubicle beside them. Behind them, Harry looked around. Yaxley had just appeared.
Let's go!
Harry yelled. He seized Hermione by the hand and Ron by the arm and turned on the spot. Darkness engulfed them, along with a sensation of compressing bands. But something was wrong. Hermione's hand seemed to be sliding out of his grip. He wondered whether he was going to suffocate. He could not breathe or see, and the only solid things in the world were Ron's arm and Hermione's finger, which were slowly slipping away. And then he saw the door of number 12 Grimmauld Place with its serpent door knocker. But before he could draw breath, there was a scream and a flash of purple light. Hermione's hand was suddenly vice-like upon his, and everything went dark again.
No, don't kill another main character, please. Please do not do this. Do not do this to me, and especially not Hermione.
I don't think she's dead, but it sure raises some fears of it. Man. Yikes. Cliffhanger indeed. Okay, we went over time. We went 20 minutes over time. So, oh boy, that was pretty incredible. What a heist. That was like an Ocean's 11 moment. Planning out, going in, everything going awry. And then Harry knocking out Umbridge and Yaxley, knocking them out, pushing back 4 Death Eaters, and then saving, what was it, 20 or 40 half muggles, what do you call them? That was a badass moment. That's crazy. Taking so much control, so much courage. So good. Okay, I gotta run, but I will be back tomorrow. Unfortunately, Thursday and Friday I will not be reading. I know it's a very short week, but because I'm doing a play. I'm doing a play and some rehearsal, so I won't be there Thursday and Friday. Tomorrow I will be. We'll be back again next week. Okay, everybody. Hope you have a good evening, and I'll see you soon. Dexter already knows we're done. He stood up and he's excited and wagging his tail at me. All right, see you later, everybody. Bye.